Hello, everyone. Today we will explore the story of a young girl who went for a walk and mysteriously vanished under strange circumstances. What happened afterward left everyone stunned. With unexpected twists and chilling discoveries, this case became one of the most mysterious in American history. But eventually, the detectives uncovered the truth. Christy Lynn Mullins was born on August 28, 1960, in Columbus, Ohio. She grew up in a large family with 5 siblings. They lived in a quiet neighborhood, far from the hustle and bustle of the city. In the summer of 1975, when Christy was 14 years old, she spent most of her time with her friends and sisters. Their favorite spot was the pool at a nearby complex, especially on hot summer days. Sometimes, Christy also did babysitting for people she knew. On August 22nd, a family friend asked Christy to babysit until late in the evening. The following morning, August 23rd, Christy woke up around noon and began to think about what to do with only 5 days left until her birthday. She was looking forward to this day, so time seemed to move very slowly. The day was extremely hot, with temperatures reaching 93 degrees Fahrenheit, around 34 degrees Celsius. So Christy decided to go swimming to cool off. She invited her younger sister, Kim, and the two went to the complex. Kim jumped straight into the water, while Christy chose to relax on a lounge chair. A little while later, a friend of Christy's approached her, and after a brief conversation, they left together. Kim was surprised that her sister left without saying a word, but decided not to follow her and stayed at the pool. After a while, Kim returned home but did not see Christy. After several hours passed with no sign of her, Kim began to worry. She walked around the neighborhood looking for Christy and happened to run into a neighbor. The neighbor mentioned that about an hour earlier, the police had found a girl's body a few miles away. Though the identity was not yet confirmed, Kim rushed home to tell their parents, and they immediately called the police, explaining that their daughter was missing. They were directed to the morgue, where the police showed them the body of a deceased girl. At first, the parents did not immediately recognize if it was their daughter due to the bruises on her face. However, the mother quickly identified a birthmark on the girl's leg and confirmed it was Christy. Once the identity was confirmed, the police informed the family, who were in a state of shock. Around 2:30 p.m. that day, a man called 911 to report that he had found a body in the woods behind the shopping center. He had come with his wife and son to buy toys for his daughter. Before entering, his son suggested they take a walk in the woods behind the building. The wooded trail, surrounded by lush trees and leading to a river, was a popular spot for relaxation. The family agreed and followed the path. When they returned, just a few meters from the trail, they noticed something unusual. As they got closer, they saw a man bending over someone on the ground, repeatedly striking them with a piece of wood. When he noticed the family, the man stood up and ran away. The father approached the scene and discovered a girl lying there, covered in blood. His wife, who was studying medicine, tried to check for a pulse but could not detect anything. The father quickly ran into the shopping center to call the police. He and his wife described the suspect to the investigators, a slender young man, around 20 years old, with shoulder-length black hair, wearing only denim shorts and boots. Based on the description, the police created a composite sketch of the suspect and distributed it to patrolling officers. However, the crime scene investigation yielded little evidence. They found the piece of wood, which was determined to be the murder weapon, but no evidence led them to the suspect. Notably, the victim's hands were tightly bound. Christy's body was found with her hands tied with a phone cord, her bikini top pulled down, and her t-shirt lying next to her, along with her shoes. Despite this, forensic experts found no signs of sexual assault. Investigators speculated that the perpetrator might have planned the assault but was scared off by something. Although there were few leads, the police quickly focused their investigation. Christy's sister revealed that she left the pool with a friend named Carol. When questioned by the police, Carol said that a stranger had called her house that day, claiming to be a DJ from a local radio station. The caller said he was organizing a cheerleading contest in town, and the winner would receive free tickets to the state fair. He said the event would take place behind the shopping center, starting at 1:45 p.m., and asked Carol to wait at the entrance of the wooded trail, where someone would meet her and explain more. This story immediately raised suspicions with the police. Carol explained that she had initially planned to attend the event with her sister, but on the way there, they ran into Christy and her younger sister. After a brief conversation, Carol invited Christy to join them. The two left their sisters behind and headed for the shopping center. When they reached the entrance to the woods, they sat on the fence waiting but saw no one. After a while, Carol decided to go into the shopping center to ask for the time. She was gone for only a few minutes, but when she returned, Christy had vanished. Carol waited a little longer, but no one appeared, so she eventually left. The police found no evidence of a cheerleading contest in town and suspected that the story could have been a ruse by the murderer to lure Carol into the woods, or perhaps just a prank unrelated to the murder. Either way, they could not trace the call, making the case even more mysterious. The investigation became more complicated as they could not identify the caller. Additionally, investigators found contradictions in Carol's statement. She said she met Christy and her sister on the way to the shopping center, but Kim insisted they were at the pool when Carol arrived to meet them. However, the story didn't end there. Later that evening, Christy's mother encountered Carol, who lived just a few dozen meters from their home, and had a strange conversation with her. Carol suddenly apologized to Christy's mother and said that things should not have gone this far. She even revealed that she herself was the target and that two people were involved in the murder. Shocked, Christy's mother tried to ask for more details, but Carol refused to continue and left. Christy's mother reported the conversation to the police, and Carol was summoned for further questioning. However, this time she completely denied saying such things and continued to stick to her original story. Carol was then tested with a lie detector, and there were no signs of deception when she answered the key questions. After this incident, investigators shifted their focus to other leads. In the following days, as news of the murder spread, fear gripped the city. People realized that a dangerous killer was still at large. The situation became more alarming when the police believed the murderer was a local, as he was familiar with the trail behind the shopping center. The detectives worked tirelessly to find the perpetrator. 3 days after Christy's murder, a significant breakthrough occurred. Around 5 p.m., a patrol officer in the downtown Columbus area spotted a man who resembled the composite sketch of the suspect. Immediately, officers contacted the detectives, and they quickly arrived at the scene. They asked the man to come with them to the police station for some questions, and he agreed. Jack Carman, 25 years old, turned out to have significant intellectual disabilities. His IQ, according to tests, was estimated to be around 50. Jack was cared for by a special medical facility and lived in an apartment provided by a non-profit organization. He could not read or write, and his speech was very limited. However, the detectives could not ignore the striking resemblance between Jack and the suspect's composite sketch. The interrogation was difficult. Most of the time, Jack answered questions with a single word or remained silent. The detectives began to doubt whether Jack fully understood the meaning of their questions. The interrogation lasted for 6 hours, but eventually, by asking the simplest and most specific questions, they were able to get Jack to confess. According to Jack's testimony, that day he left his apartment and took the bus to the shopping center to buy clothes. As he walked through the parking lot to enter the center, he saw Christy sitting on the fence near the entrance to the trail leading into the woods. Jack approached her, tied her hands, and dragged her into the woods. There, he attacked her. When Christy tried to escape, Jack chased her, picked up a piece of wood from the ground, and struck her multiple times on the head. Afterward, he ran to the main road in front of the shopping center and took the bus. The next day, the police took Jack to the forest, where he pointed out the exact spot where the crime occurred. He also provided details that only the perpetrator would know, such as how the piece of wood had broken in half when he hit the victim. The detectives also conducted a lineup, placing Jack among several others, so the couple who had found Christy's body could identify him. Both of them pointed to Jack. Jack was charged with multiple offenses, including assault and murder, although experts found no evidence of sexual assault. Jack had confessed, so the prosecution decided not to drop the sexual assault charge. The prosecutor sought the death penalty, but Jack's lawyer, with his consent, reached a deal. Jack agreed to plead guilty before the judge in exchange for a life sentence instead of the death penalty. With the attention of thousands following the case, everything moved quickly. On September 3rd, just 11 days after the murder, Jack was sentenced to life in prison. However, after the trial, many began to doubt Jack's guilt. As details of his confession and his background appeared in the media, more and more people questioned whether Jack was truly capable of committing such a crime. Those who knew Jack initially found it hard to believe. According to them, he had never shown any signs of aggression. Jack was very passive, shy, and easily submissive. He could lie about anything if someone asked him firmly. For example, once he took the blame for a broken boiler at a charity center, even though someone else had actually caused the damage. There was also skepticism about Jack's ability to confess to the crime. He could hardly articulate clearly, yet the police claimed he described the crime in detail. Jack's acquaintances believed that the investigators had provided him with the necessary information by asking leading questions containing details of the case. For example, asking, "Did you hit the victim with a piece of wood?" If Jack answered, "Yes," the police could then use that answer as a confession. A woman who had been involved in Jack's care stated that under threat, he could confess to anything. Just hearing that he would face the electric chair, Jack would do whatever the police asked. But that was not all. Supporters of Jack's innocence found that the police had taken him to the crime scene at the same time as the witnesses, the couple who later identified him at the police station. This meant they had seen Jack and knew he was a suspect before they were asked to identify him. The police claimed the witnesses hadn't met Jack, but no one believed that. There were many other details that raised doubts about Jack's involvement. The police couldn't find the bus driver or any passengers who saw Jack on his way to the shopping center, as per his confession that it was how he returned home. However, the most significant factor was the testimony of several people at the charity organization where Jack lived and worked. They claimed to have seen him around 1:30 p.m. If this testimony was accurate, Jack could not have reached the shopping center on the outskirts of the city and committed the murder before 1:50 p.m. Even if he left right after being seen, the bus would have taken at least 40 minutes to arrive. These details not only made many people question Jack's guilt, but also led to the conclusion that the police had coerced his confession. Even Christy's parents began to doubt that Jack was the real killer. On September 9th, just 6 days after the verdict, around 70 people gathered outside City Hall to draw attention to the case and call for a reinvestigation. They formed a public committee aimed at seeking justice. Thanks to this advocacy, Jack found a new lawyer, who quickly filed a motion to reconsider the case. Several months later, a judge overturned Jack's confession and ordered a retrial. At this point, the prosecution had to prove Jack's guilt almost from scratch, which seemed like an impossible task. While preparations for the new trial were underway, Christ's father, Norman Mills, began his own investigation into the case. From the beginning, he distrusted the detectives, believing they hadn't made enough effort to find his daughter's killer. He ultimately decided not to rely on the police and began searching for answers on his own. Soon after the murder, Norman, along with a few neighbors, visited the forest to inspect the crime scene. There, they found a pair of blood-stained denim shorts and a pair of men's underwear. These items were submitted to the police, who had initially overlooked them. However, it was still unclear whether these pieces of evidence were related to the case or if they had ever been tested. Jack's retrial didn't begin until 1977, 2 years after the murder. The defense team had two main tasks. First, to prove Jack's innocence, and second, to try to identify the real killer. In fact, they had a strong candidate for the primary suspect, Henry Newell, the man who, with his wife, had discovered Christ's body. When the murder occurred, Henry was 25 years old. By the time the trial took place, Jack's lawyers had compiled a significant list of reasons to suspect Henry, and this list only grew longer as the trial progressed. Henry initially drew attention due to his criminal record. Since his teenage years, he had been arrested multiple times for various offenses and had served 3 prison sentences. Henry had even escaped from prison twice before being recaptured. At the time of Jack's trial, Henry was serving his fourth sentence for setting fire to his own house in order to claim the insurance money. The defense team also revisited the evidence in Chris' case and discovered several suspicious details in Henry's testimony. He claimed that when he found the body, he ran up and threw the bloodied piece of wood away. He explained this action as a reaction to shock, but it raised questions. Why would he pick up the murder weapon and throw it away from the body without a clear reason? Additionally, Henry claimed that he thought the girl was still alive, so he took off his shirt and pressed it to her face to stop the bleeding. This also raised doubts. Was he genuinely trying to stop the bleeding? Or was his shirt stained with blood during the crime, and he needed an explanation for it? These contradictions and oddities in Henry's testimony led the defense team to question his role in the murder. The investigation increasingly shifted toward examining Henry's involvement. The defense lawyers also found a shopping center employee who had witnessed Henry's actions when he ran into the center to call the police. The employee testified that Henry was not wearing a shirt at the time but was wearing denim shorts. However, when the police arrived at the scene, he had changed into a different pair of pants. The employee also noticed a fresh bruise on Henry's face, as if someone had just hit him. When asked why she didn't report this, she replied that no one had asked her about it. The officers should have noticed the bruise, but they ignored it. These inconsistencies and suspicious behaviors surrounding Henry raised further doubts about his involvement in the crime, casting a shadow over the case against Jack. Henry agreed to undergo a lie detector test, but during the process, he vomited on the machine, leading the police to not arrange another test. Another witness, Henry's neighbor, testified that on the night of the murder, he had spoken with Henry and noticed several fresh scratches on his arms. The neighbor also mentioned that he had seen a piece of telephone wire in Henry's garage, which resembled the wire used to bind the victim's hands. Furthermore, the neighbor shared a strange story that Henry had once claimed to know Carol, Chris' friend, and said they had once swum together naked in a pool. Given that Henry was 25 at the time, this revelation shocked everyone involved in the case. However, there was no way to directly verify whether this event had actually occurred. Nevertheless, it indicated that Henry knew Carol, who was directly connected to the case. Henry's wife, Pam, also testified in court, stating that everything had happened as they had told the police on the first day. They had gone to the mall. Their son had wanted to take a walk, and they had found the body in the forest. Pam added that before this, Henry had been at home and only briefly went outside to chase away the neighborhood kids who were throwing fireworks in their yard. Carol also testified, denying that she had ever met Henry. When asked about the statement she made to Chris' mother that things shouldn't have gone this far, Carol again denied remembering saying this. Henry was also brought from prison to court and repeated his story without changing any details, maintaining that he had no involvement in the crime. However, one of the most pivotal moments of the trial came when the full transcript of Jack's interrogation was presented. After viewing it, everyone realized that Jack had indeed been coerced into confirming the details the police had provided about the crime. Jack barely spoke and appeared not to understand what the police expected from him. But the most crucial moment of the trial came on the fifth day, when an unexpected witness appeared, neither anticipated by the prosecution nor Jack's defense team. Bobby, Henry's son. His testimony shocked everyone following the case. Bobby revealed that on the day of the murder, Henry had indeed gone outside to chase the kids throwing fireworks, but he had been gone for over half an hour, contrary to Pam's testimony that he was gone for just a few minutes. When he returned, Henry wasn't wearing a shirt or sandals, and there were scratches on his hands and face. Bobby also recounted how Henry called Pam into another room to talk privately. Afterward, they both went outside and told Bobby they were heading to the mall. Upon arriving there, they immediately led Bobby to the trail behind the mall. Bobby insisted that he had not suggested taking a walk there as his parents had previously claimed. Once in the forest, they quickly found one of Henry's sandals, partially torn, and soon after, they discovered Chris' body. Pam then instructed Bobby not to tell anyone what he had seen. Bobby stated that he only decided to tell the truth after talking to his biological father, who convinced him to do the right thing. Bobby's grandmother also testified in court, recounting a strange incident involving Henry. When Henry, and Pam attended Christ's funeral, on the way back, she remarked that it was a terrible tragedy. Henry suddenly responded, "That will teach her to keep her mouth shut." Another witness, a friend of Henry, claimed that Henry had confessed to killing Christ. He also stated that the murder had been unintentional and not premeditated. In the end, the trial raised significant questions about Henry's true guilt and the role of the police in coercing Jack's confession. The trial almost completely removed any doubt about Jack's involvement, and all charges against him were dropped. However, despite the abundance of evidence suggesting Henry's potential involvement, the prosecutor stated there was no intention to charge him. The prosecutor also claimed that the initial investigation had been conducted as well as possible, but acknowledged that the police had either overlooked or deliberately ignored a significant amount of evidence from the start. This response sparked outrage among the public, which reached its peak when, 2 days later, the prosecutor retracted his statement and agreed to reopen the investigation into Christ's murder. However, there was a serious issue. Investigators continued to rely on the initial investigation, including the testimonies of Henry and Pam. In other words, the police still worked under the assumption that the couple had coincidentally found Christ's body in the forest, with a long-haired man, shirtless, loitering nearby. As a result, investigators announced they would search for new suspects with physical features similar to Jack's. Of course, this approach yielded no results. The investigation dragged on for several more months, but ultimately the case went cold with no progress. Christ's father, Norman Mills, never gave up on seeking justice. At one point, he filed a civil lawsuit against Jack, but the true reason behind this action was not as simple as it seemed. In fact, he did not believe Jack was involved in the crime, but this legal procedure would give him access to case files, allowing him to gather all available information. However, this effort also bore no fruit. In 2006, Norman Mills passed away from cancer without ever receiving answers regarding the case. For a long time, there was no progress in the investigation into Christ's murder until 2013, when former lawyer John Aller took an interest in the case. He decided to investigate the case himself, reaching out to all those involved in the hopes of uncovering new leads. Christ's family handed him a box containing all the records her father had collected before he passed away. Through his investigation, John Aller retraced his steps through the shopping center, spoke to dozens of people, and gradually concluded that the murderer behind Christ's death was none other than Henry. During the investigation, he discovered that Christ's friend, Carol, had been using marijuana at the time. Digging deeper, he found that Carol, like several other teenagers, may have bought drugs from Henry. This became another link between Henry and Carol, and could point to the real reason why Christ went to the forest that day. John Aller hypothesized that the entire story about the DJ and the cheerleading contest was fabricated. In reality, Carol may have arranged to meet Henry in the woods to buy drugs, and perhaps invited Christ along under some pretense, such as the DJ story. A darker theory suggests that Carol may have lured Christ there at Henry's request, with the intention of him assaulting her. However, Christ fought back, as evidenced by scratches and bruises on Henry's body, which led to him killing her. Upon further investigation, Aller discovered that by that time, Henry had committed other crimes, including domestic violence and assault. Another incident involving him, but not prosecuted, was the death of his wife, Pam. In 1982, Pam had filed for divorce, and just a month later, she was found dead in the apartment she still shared with Henry. The official cause of death was an overdose of sleeping pills, and police found a note suggesting she had committed suicide. However, Pam's family didn't believe this theory and suspected that Henry had faked the overdose. Henry had staged Pam's suicide, but the strangest part was that no sleeping pill package was found in the apartment, even though Pam could not have disposed of it after taking such a large dose. In 2013, the same year John Aller took on the case, Henry passed away from cancer at the age of 63. Nevertheless, Aller continued his work and published a book compiling all the information related to Christ's murder. This book sparked renewed interest in the case, and Christ's family, along with many others, began calling for the investigation to be reopened. Some of Henry's family members also contacted Aller, revealing that the whole family knew Henry was the murderer but had kept quiet. One of them shared that a few months before her 16th birthday, Henry gave her a car. While they were test driving it, Henry suddenly asked her to stop the car, looked at her, and said that he had killed Christ, even describing the details of the crime. The woman said she couldn't believe it at the time. She thought Henry had been drinking heavily, and she assumed he was just making up the story while drunk. However, after reading Aller's book, everything became clear to her. These events led to the reopening of the case in May 2014. For several months, detectives reviewed all the evidence, interviewed dozens of people, and reassessed the clues. In a confession to family members, Henry had said that he had assaulted Christ, while forensic experts initially found no evidence of this. Modern technology allowed them to re-examine Christ's clothing and find traces of semen. Unfortunately, these traces were too small for DNA analysis. The investigation continued into late 2015 when detectives held a press conference. After 40 years since the murder, they finally declared that there was no doubt Henry was the perpetrator. However, because he had passed away, the case could not go to trial. The case was officially declared solved, and the investigation was closed. Although there was no official confession from Henry, investigators outlined a plausible scenario of what had happened. It's likely that when Henry left the house that day, he went to the trail behind the shopping center. Carol may have invited him there to buy marijuana, but this part could not be confirmed. Upon arrival, he found Christ alone and decided to attack her. Henry bound Christ's hands with phone wire and took her deeper into the woods. Christ fought back, scratching him and hitting him in the face. Afterward, Henry likely overpowered her and killed her with a piece of wood he found nearby. Henry then returned home and recounted what had happened to his wife. The two of them came up with a plan to help him avoid punishment. What's notable is that Carol, after all these years, still hasn't revealed the truth. It's possible that she was involved in the incident in some way, and it can't be ruled out that one day she might come forward to clarify what happened. At the press conference, the police also officially apologized to Christ's family for the negligence of the investigators at that time. From the very beginning, there was enough evidence to charge Henry with murder, but the investigators either failed to recognize it or deliberately ignored it. Please share your thoughts about this story in the comments. And don't forget to hit the like button if you found this content helpful. Thank you for following.